Travis was the one who texted first. Let's get drunk like we used to. No context. No build-up. Just that one line, sitting on my screen at 9:47 p.m. like a dare. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because I knew exactly what he meant. Not a couple beers. Not catching up. He meant really drunk. The kind where you forget the week, forget the version of yourself you've become, and slip back into something familiar and reckless. I should have said no. Instead, I typed, on my way. Travis and I had history. Not romantic history, at least not officially, but the kind of closeness that blurs lines when you look back on it too honestly. We met in college, survived bad roommates, worse jobs, and a lot of long nights together. He was my best friend for years. The person I trusted without thinking about it. Somewhere along the way, life happened. We drifted. Texts got shorter. Hangouts turned into "we should do this again." That never actually happened. Until that night. I brought whiskey. He already had beer. The moment he opened the door, it felt like stepping backward in time. Same crooked grin. Same messy hair. Same way he looked at me like nothing had changed. "Damn," he said, stepping aside. "You actually came. Don't sound so surprised," I said, brushing past him. His apartment was dim, music playing low, the smell of something clean and familiar, laundry detergent. Maybe. He handed me a beer before I even sat down. We didn't talk about work, or stress, or the gap between now and then. We talked about stupid stuff. Old stories. People we hadn't thought about in years. The alcohol did what it always does. Took the edge off. Loosened things. Made us louder, then quieter. At some point, we switched to whiskey. That's when the conversation changed. "You ever miss it?" Travis asked, staring into his glass. "Miss what?" "Us. Before everything got complicated." I shrugged, but my chest tightened. "Sometimes." He nodded slowly, like that answer meant more than I'd intended. We sat closer than necessary. Our knees touched. Neither of us moved away. By the time we realized how late it was, we were both pretty far gone. "You can crash here," he said quickly. "No way you're getting home like this." It felt normal. Easy. We'd done it 100 times before. He grabbed blankets. I kicked off my shoes. We didn't overthink it. I fell asleep fast, head buzzing, body heavy, thoughts finally quiet. And then I woke up. Not fully, just enough to notice warmth behind me. An arm around my waist. Slow breathing against my neck. "Travis." For a second, I stayed frozen, heart pounding, trying to figure out if this was just drunk muscle memory or something else entirely. Then he shifted closer. And that's when I knew, whatever we thought we were doing that night, it wasn't just about drinking anymore. I didn't move right away. My brain was still catching up, trying to decide whether this was real or just the leftover haze of too much whiskey. Travis's arm was solid around me, relaxed, like he'd done this 1,000 times. His hand rested just above my hip, fingers loose, not gripping comfortable. Familiar. Dangerous. I told myself to shift away, to clear my throat, to wake him up and make a joke out of it. I didn't do any of that. Instead, I stayed still, listening to his breathing, feeling the slow rise and fall of his chest against my back. The room was dark, lit only by a thin stripe of streetlight cutting across the floor. My mouth was dry. My heart was beating way too loud. Maybe he was still asleep. Maybe he didn't even realize what he was doing. That excuse lasted about 3 seconds. Travis moved again, deliberately this time. His arm tightened just slightly, pulling me closer until my back fit perfectly against his chest. I felt his legs slide in behind mine, anchoring me there. He wasn't asleep. "Simon," he murmured, voice low and rough, like he'd been awake longer than I had. I swallowed. "Yeah." A pause, long enough for my thoughts to spiral. "Sorry," he said quietly, but he didn't move his arm. Just tell me if this is weird." It was weird. It was also something I'd never admitted wanting, not even to myself. I stared at the wall, every nerve in my body lit up, trying to decide which version of myself was in control right now, the cautious adult, or the guy who'd shown up with whiskey and nostalgia and zero boundaries. I exhaled slowly. "You're fine." His breath hitched. "Just for a second." "Okay," he said, softer now. We lay there like that, not talking, not moving, but the silence felt charged in a way that made it impossible to relax. I could feel how warm he was. How close. Every tiny shift sent a ripple through me. I became painfully aware of my own body, of how little space there was between us, of how his hand rested against me like it belonged there. Then I felt it. Subtle at first. Pressure. Heat. There was no mistaking it. My stomach dropped. I stiffened, every thought screaming at once, don't panic, don't assume, don't make this worse. Travis must have felt me tense because he froze too. His hand flexed, then went still. Shit, he whispered. I didn't mean dash. It's okay, I said quickly, maybe too quickly. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I get it. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in just a fraction closer, his forehead resting lightly against the back of my shoulder. I've thought about this, he admitted. About you. For a long time. That did it. All the half-buried memories came rushing back. The late nights. The way he'd lingered too close. The jokes that felt like tests. The looks that lasted a second longer than they needed to. You never said anything, I murmured. He gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Neither did you. I turned my head just enough to see him in my peripheral vision. His eyes were open, dark in the low light, focused on me like he was bracing for impact. If you want me to stop, he said, voice tight, I will. Right now. The room felt impossibly small. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. From knowing that whatever I said next would change something we couldn't undo. I thought about stepping away, about pretending this was just a drunken mistake. Instead, I shifted closer. His breath caught, sharp and audible, and his arm tightened around me like he'd been holding back the whole time. And suddenly, there was no pretending anymore. I don't know what I expected to happen after that. Some big, dramatic moment. A confession. A kiss straight out of a movie. Instead, everything stayed quiet. Travis didn't rush me. That was the thing that surprised me the most. He just held me there, arm firm around my waist, like he was giving me space to change my mind. Like he knew this wasn't just about the night, it was about everything we'd been circling for years. I shifted again, slowly this time, turning just enough so we were facing each other. Our noses were inches apart. I could smell the whiskey still on his breath, mixed with something clean and familiar that instantly grounded me. You sure? He asked, barely louder than a breath. I nodded. Yeah. That was all he needed. He kissed me carefully at first, like he was afraid I might disappear if he pressed too hard. His lips were warm, a little hesitant, and the restraint somehow made it worse in the best way. My hand came up on instinct, gripping the front of his shirt, anchoring myself. The moment I kissed him back, something in him snapped. The kiss deepened, slower but more certain, like we were both realizing at the same time that this wasn't new, it was overdue. His hand slid from my waist to my lower back, pulling me closer until there was no space left to question anything. I felt him smile against my mouth. Just for a second. Damn, he murmured, like he couldn't believe this was real. I laughed softly, breathless. You're not exactly subtle. Neither are you, he said, brushing his thumb along my jaw. You always do this thing when you're nervous. What thing? You pretend you're calm. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. Because he was right. He always had been. We lay there, tangled together, kissing like we had all the time in the world. No rush. No pressure. Just the slow burn of two people finally letting themselves cross a line they'd been skirting forever. At some point, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing harder now. Tell me if this changes things in a bad way, he said quietly. I thought about it. About the risk. About how easy it would be to lose him if we messed this up. Then I thought about how wrong it would feel to pretend this never happened. It already changed things, I said. I don't think that's bad. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. His arms wrapped around me fully now, protective, sure. Morning's going to be complicated, he said. I smiled into his shoulder. Yeah, but for the first time, that didn't feel like a problem. It felt like something we'd figure out. Together. Morning didn't come gently. It came with a dull headache, dry mouth, and the sudden, very clear awareness that I was wrapped around Travis like it was the most natural thing in the world. For half a second, I stayed still, eyes closed, hoping I could rewind time or at least delay reality. His arm was heavy over my waist, his chin resting on the top of my head. The room smelled faintly of coffee from somewhere down the hall, his neighbor, maybe in stale whiskey. Then he shifted. Please tell me you're awake, he muttered, voice rough with sleep. I opened my eyes. Unfortunately, yes. He laughed quietly, a breathy sound that sent an unexpected warmth through my chest. His arm loosened, not pulling away completely, just enough to give me space if I wanted it. I noticed that immediately. The care in it. Well, he said, staring at the ceiling. That wasn't exactly how I planned last night going. Same, I said. Then, after a beat, not mad about it though, he turned his head to look at me. Really look at me. Like he was checking for cracks, for regret. When he didn't find any, his shoulders visibly relaxed. Good, he said. Because I'd hate myself if I messed this up. That word this hung between us. Undefined. Fragile. We got up slowly, both of us moving like our bodies weren't quite in sync with our brains yet. I borrowed one of his t-shirts. He made coffee without asking how I took it, because of course he remembered. We stood in the kitchen, barefoot, quiet but not awkward. That was the strange part. It felt settled, like we'd crossed something and landed on our feet. So, he said eventually, leaning against the counter, we should probably talk about what happens now. I took a sip of coffee, buying myself a second. Yeah, probably. He nodded. I don't want this to be a drunk mistake thing. I can pretend if that's what you need, but I don't want to. I met his eyes. They were serious, open, a little scared. I don't want that either, I said. But I also don't want to rush into labels just because we finally stopped lying to ourselves. A slow smile spread across his face. God, I missed how your brain works. I rolled my eyes. You missed my anxiety. That too. We laughed, tension easing just a little. He stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that I could feel his warmth. So, he said, softer now. We take it slow. We don't freak out. We don't disappear on each other. That sounds surprisingly healthy, I said. Don't get used to it, he replied, grinning. When I finally left later that morning, it wasn't with a rushed goodbye or an awkward silence. He walked me to the door, kissed me once quick, intentional, and said, text me when you get home. I did. And for the first time in a long while, complicated didn't feel like a warning. It felt like the beginning of something honest. The week after that night felt unreal. Travis didn't suddenly become a different person, and neither did I. That was the strangest part. There was no dramatic shift, no awkward silence, no over-the-top intensity. We just talked, more than we had in years. Texts throughout the day, dumb memes. Did you eat? Energy sneaking in where it hadn't existed before. But underneath all of it, there was tension. The good kind. The kind that makes your stomach flip when your phone lights up. We didn't see each other for 5 days. Not because we were avoiding it, just life. Meetings, deadlines, exhaustion. Still, by Thursday night, I was pacing my apartment like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. He finally did. You free tonight? I stared at the message, then typed and erased 3 different replies before settling on. Yeah. Why? His response came immediately. I want to see you. Properly this time. I showed up sober. Nervous. Overthinking everything. When he opened the door, I forgot all of it. He looked relaxed, t-shirt, jeans, hair still damp like he'd just showered. No beer in his hand this time. That felt intentional. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for half a second too long, smiling like idiots, before he stepped aside and let me in. No music. No alcohol. Just us. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, which felt ridiculous given what we'd already done, but neither of us rushed it. We talked. About the night. About college. About the stuff we hadn't said back then. I think I was scared, he admitted at one point, rubbing the back of his neck. Not of you. Of losing what we had. Same, I said. Turns out pretending nothing was there didn't exactly protect that either. He nodded, eyes fixed on me. I kept comparing everyone I dated to you. Didn't really realize it until recently. My chest tightened. That's not fair. He smiled slightly. I know. The distance between us disappeared without either of us noticing. One moment we were talking, the next his knee was brushing mine, his hand resting on the couch behind me. When he kissed me this time, it wasn't hesitant. It was certain. We moved slower than that first night, but deeper, like we were learning each other in a new context. No alcohol. No excuses. Just intention. Later, lying together, his fingers traced lazy patterns on my arm. This feels different, he said. Good different? I asked. Terrifyingly good. I laughed softly. Yeah, same. That night didn't solve everything. It didn't need to. But it confirmed something important, that what we'd started wasn't a fluke. It wasn't nostalgia or whiskey or loneliness. It was us, finally choosing not to look away. And somehow, that made all the complicated parts feel worth it. What I didn't expect was how normal everything started to feel. Not boring normal. Just steady. Like we'd quietly slid into a rhythm that had always been waiting for us. Travis started staying over more. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at his. No announcements. No big conversations, just toothbrushes slowly appearing where they hadn't before. We didn't tell anyone right away. Not because we were hiding, exactly. More like we wanted to make sure it was real before we let the outside world poke at it. Travis had always been more private than he let on, and I understood that instinct better than I wanted to admit. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all hit me. Like the night we ran into one of our old college friends at a bar. Nothing dramatic, just a casual hello, a few drinks. But the entire time, I was hyper-aware of how close Travis stood to me without touching. How his hand hovered, restrained. How carefully he chose his words. On the walk home, I finally said it. You don't have to act like I'm fragile. He stopped walking, turned to face me under a flickering streetlight. I'm not. Then what is it? He exhaled slowly. I'm scared of screwing this up. That honesty knocked the edge right out of me. I'm not going anywhere, I said. You know that, right? He searched my face like he was committing it to memory. Then he nodded. Yeah, I do. A few days later, he invited me to dinner at his place. Not takeout. Not leftovers. He actually cooked. I watched him move around the kitchen, comfortable, focused, sleeves rolled up, and felt something warm and terrifying bloom in my chest. Halfway through the meal, he set his fork down. I told my sister, he said. I blinked. Yeah. She said it made sense. He smiled faintly, which was annoying, honestly. I laughed. She always liked me. She always saw things I ignored. That night, lying in bed with his arm draped over me, I realized how far we'd come from that first drunk text. How something impulsive had turned into something intentional. Chosen. But not everything was easy. There were moments, small ones, where old habits crept in, where silence felt heavier than it should, where we both pulled back at the same time, waiting for the other to make the first move. One night, I finally said, we don't have to be perfect at this. He kissed my temple. Good. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. I smiled into the dark. Me neither. And somehow, that felt like the most solid ground I'd stood on in a long time. The first real fight caught me off guard. It wasn't loud. No raised voices. No slammed doors. Which somehow made it worse. It started over something stupid, plans. Or more specifically, Travis canceling them. Again. He texted an hour before we were supposed to meet. Some vague explanation about work running late, followed by rain check. Normally, I would have brushed it off. Told myself not to be dramatic. But something in me snapped. You've been doing this a lot lately, I typed. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I know. I'm sorry. Just tired. That answer didn't sit right. When he came over later that night unannounced, like he knew texting wouldn't fix it, I didn't pretend everything was fine. He could tell the second he walked in. What's going on? He asked. I crossed my arms. Are you pulling away? Or am I imagining things? He frowned. What? No. Because it feels like it, I said. Like whenever this starts to feel real, you get busy. That hit something. I saw it in his face, the reflexive defensiveness, the urge to retreat. I'm not running, he said. I'm just adjusting. To what? I asked. Being happy. He flinched. We stood there, the air thick, both of us suddenly aware of how much there was to lose. This wasn't college anymore. We couldn't disappear for a week and pretend nothing happened. I've never done this before, he said quietly. Not like this. With someone who actually knows me. Neither had I. That was the terrifying part. I don't need perfect, I said, softer now. I just need to know you're here. He stepped closer, hesitating for a second before reaching for my hand. I am. I swear. I just need you to call me out when I start shutting down. I squeezed his fingers. Deal. But you don't get to vanish. Deal, he said. After that, things didn't magically smooth out, but they got more honest. We stopped tiptoeing. Started saying the uncomfortable stuff out loud. And somehow, that made us stronger. A few weeks later, we told our friends. No big announcement. Just casual honesty. Some were surprised. Some weren't. One of them laughed and said, about time. The night we finally made it official, actually said the word boyfriend. We were lying in bed, tangled together, half asleep. You know, Travis murmured. This all started because I wanted an excuse to see you. I smiled into his chest. You could have just asked. I know, he said. But I was scared you'd say no. I tilted my head up, kissed him slowly. I didn't then. I wouldn't now. Sometimes I think about that text. The impulsiveness of it. How easily things could have gone differently. But they didn't. And every morning I wake up next to him. I'm glad we decided to complicate things instead of walking away. There's a moment that sticks with me more than all the big conversations or late-night confessions. It was months later. Nothing special about the day. We were grocery shopping arguing about whether we really needed two kinds of pasta when Travis reached for my hand without thinking about it. Not checking who was around. Not hesitating. Just instinct. I froze for half a second, then realized no one cared. Or maybe they did, but it didn't matter. He didn't even look at me, just kept walking, thumb brushing against my knuckles like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's when it hit me. This wasn't fragile anymore. Later that night, we sat on his couch, legs tangled, some show playing neither of us was really watching. I rested my head on his shoulder, and he absent-mindedly ran his fingers through my hair. Crazy how this started, I said. He hummed. Yeah. One drunk text. He smiled, kissed the top of my head. Best bad idea I've ever had. I thought back to that night, the nostalgia, the whiskey, the way we were both pretending we didn't know exactly what we were doing. How easy it would have been to laugh it off the next morning, to call it a mistake and slowly drift apart again. We almost did. Instead, we chose the harder option, the honest one. Loving Travis didn't fix my life. It didn't magically make everything easy, but it grounded me. It made me braver. It taught me that some connections don't fade, they wait. And every now and then, when we're lying in bed and the world is quiet, he'll look at me and say, "You know, we almost missed this, right?" I always answer the same way. Yeah, but we didn't. And that still feels like the best ending I could have asked for.